Hello. We're doing Puerto Rico, obviously, and I'm talking about how Puerto Rico should not become the first state of the United States. First off, making Puerto Rico a state would harm their economy as well as the U.S. economy. Their cost of living would greatly rise. The average monthly income is around $300 a month, and the average electric bill is around $12 a month, and water and waste collection is about $5 to $7 a month. When Puerto Rico becomes a state, if it does, the prices will greatly rise. Writer Casey McAlpin from the Washington Times on February 27, 2009 said that half of its population, Puerto Rico's population, lives in poverty, and making our recession-induced 13.2% poverty seem like a Disney fairy tale. And over 50% of eligible workers can't find jobs. The government sector in Puerto Rico generates approximately 380,000 jobs, or roughly 32% of total employment, and many of those jobs would be lost if made into a state. Puerto Ricans do not pay taxes and do not vote for the U.S. president, but they do drain the United States of welfare and employment benefits and pay Social Security. According to a report by the Congressional Research Service, CSR, if Puerto Rico were to become a state based on a population of approximately 4 million, they would be entitled to 6 seats in the House of Representatives, and was set by the Apportionment Act of 1911. For nearly a century, the permanent number of seats hasn't changed. If Puerto Rico were to become a state, Congress would either have to reapportion the 435 seats by giving 6 to Puerto Rico and subtracting seats from other states, or temporarily increase the size of the House until the next reapportionment following the next census, or permanently increase the size of the House. Based on current information, the CRS report projects that the states that could lose an existing seat or not receive any expected additional seat after the 2010 consensus is in order to provide 6 of 435 states. The Puerto Rico include Arizona, Missouri, New York, South Carolina, Texas, and Washington. Statehood for Puerto Rico would give Puerto Rico more congressional representation than 25 of our own 50 states as well right now. Also, if statehood be for Puerto Rico, another issue would be language. Puerto Rico is a nation which is very proud of its Spanish language and culture, as the United States used to be of its English language and American culture. Puerto Rican Governor Aníbal Acevedo Vila stated that statehood would go against the sense of uniqueness, culture, identity that we do have under our Commonwealth situation. While the island is technically bilingual, the language of the government, public schools, courts, and 80 to 90% of the residents of Puerto Rico is Spanish-speaking only. Fully 90% of Puerto Rico's high schools graduates do not speak English as well. The United States has no official language. Even if they did, the Puerto Rico congressional delegation would be working day and night to impose Spanish everywhere possible, just as the elected officials in Canada's Quebec province work day and night to impose French wherever possible. As a state, Puerto Rico could make Spanish its own official language and require the rest of the United States to adapt to that. That could cost roughly $2 to $3 billion each year in language translation costs alone, based on the cost Quebec imposes on Canada. In fact, it is likely that one or more of the congressional delegation from a 51st state of Puerto Rico will be either unable or unwilling to conduct business in English. As Jamie Fuster, the non-voting delegate to Congress elected by Puerto Ricans, reminded readers of the Washington Post in his editorial of July 31st, 1989, will that mean our Congress will look like a session of the UN General Assembly, with everyone wearing headsets? Must the congressional records be printed in Spanish? Attempts by the United States to Americanize the islands in the past have failed spectacularly. Casey McAlpin, again, of the Washington Times, also said that all this manipulation would be amusing were it not for the consequences of making a Spanish-speaking territory our 51st state. Unless Puerto Rico were required to make English language of its government, as a precondition for joining the Union, it would permanently divide the United States along linguistic lines, with all the conflict and cost that would generate from it. Scholar and defender of Puerto Rican culture Ricardo Oliveira asserted that barely 20% of Puerto Rico's 3.8 million inhabitants speak English well, while the remaining 80% speak only Spanish. The minority, Puerto Rican Independence Party, PIP, and NMI favor separation from the United States and reject English as an official language altogether. The PIP Municipal Affairs Secretary Juan Ramirez said his party favored making the law reflect Puerto Rican socio-cultural reality, and that means our only language is Spanish, and English should be learned like any other foreign language. Not forgetting all the federal taxes that would have to be taken into account, former Governor of Puerto Rico, Carlos Romero Porcello, says in the article, "Statehood is for the poor." If it were a state, Puerto Rico would be absolutely assured of enormous amounts of federal money that comes straight out of the pockets of U.S. citizens right now, and it would pay all the grips of problems they have right now come from that. Univision Representative Fernando Pizarro says, after all, statehood got its costs from being forced to pay more federal taxes to losing a sense of national identity. The transition from Commonwealth, what Puerto Rico is now, to statehood would bring immediate infrastructure and the environment are far below American standards. Puerto Rico has a population with a median national income of $17,741, nearly a third of that for the U.S. Also, in 1996, the U.S. General Accounting Office found that if IRS tax rules are applied to residents of Puerto Rico, the residents would owe around $623 million in federal income tax before taking into account the earned income tax credit. So making Puerto Rico the 51st state is harmful for both U.S. and their own economy. There would be a big issue on what would happen with the official language. There would be a lot of costs for the U.S. and Puerto Rico, such as federal taxes that many Puerto Ricans would not be able to manage financially, and Puerto Rico would gain more political representation than half the states in the U.S. already have.